Dr. Ahmad Yousaf is a paediatrician with a focus on intensive care. He's just returned from Gaza and worked at al-Shifa and al-Aqsa hospital for 2.5 weeks. He joins us now from Amman. Good to have you with us, since you are a paediatrician and since you, I understand, literally just got back from Gaza. Talk to us about the changes you're seeing in the conditions, particularly for children when they get wounded by these Israeli strikes. What do they face?
So for the first 2.5 weeks, first, thank you for having me. I just got off the bus from Gaza and just landed in the hotel. So I can speak to a situation of what it was like the last 2.5 weeks, where we saw daily MCIs, mass casualty incidents, in both hospitals in which I worked, where masses of young boys, children, young men who were either at the GHF site when we were in the south at Aqsa, or at the food supply stations in the north at Zakim. They would go and they'd come into the ER, tens of them at a time, with shrapnel injuries and bullet injuries in very specific patterns, and I'll speak to that in a second. And every single patient we spoke to, child, teenage boy, or young men, because these are often the people sent by their families or the ones willing to take the risk to try to get food for their families, given the dynamic of the risk associated with trying to carry a 5-pound bag of flour, 20-bag pound of flour, maybe kilometers sometimes. And they say we were trying to get the food, and while we were waiting, we were indiscriminately shot at. And this happened every single day I was there, up until about 3 days before I just came, as there was a little bit more food supply, aid trucks allowed in, and so there was less people willing to risk their life at the food stations at GHF.
And doctor, tell us about the specific patterns of wounds that you saw and what questions they raised for you as a medical expert.
When these MCIs occurred every day, these kids would come in with very specific, almost like a daily pattern, meaning like on a given day, a Monday, we get MCIs, 40, 50, 60 patients come in at a given time, and they were all shot in the legs or the pelvic area or the groin on a given day, just kind of a similar pattern. And then the next day, we would see a chest, upper body, chest, thoracic pattern, and then there were days where we saw only head wounds and upper neck bullet wounds. And what it felt like, anecdotally, at least for myself and the physicians that I went with, was somebody behind the gun that day was going to choose the way that they were going to either maim or decide to kill people. It was age indiscriminate. The people would tell us they were sometimes, at the site, online, they were around the area, they were trying to leave, depending upon what was happening. They were scrambling, trying to get food for their family in different stages. And they were shot indiscriminately. It was like they were being sprayed, but it seemed quite obvious to them, and then to us from a pattern recognition perspective in terms of who came to the ER, that on a given day, whoever was making the decision behind the trigger was choosing a very specific pattern of fire.
UN officials have called these notorious sites death traps. Did you notice a change, a difference in the types of wounds, the level of casualties on days in which some of these sites were open and days in which some of these sites were closed?
That's, I would say this. I would take it a step further and say all of Gaza today is a death trap. It is a cage in which people are being marked for death. What it feels like while we're there, and what most of the people on the ground express, is that it almost feels like there's a quota for the number of people that need to be killed on a given day, and it's quite easy to lure out desperately hungry young men and teenage boys who are coming out to desperately get food for their families and themselves. And there's a quota. A certain number of people have to die today to mow the grass, right? As kind of historically been said. On the days where we did not see that occur, we saw airstrikes. So the last 4 days that we were there, when there was a bit more aid access via food trucks that were allowed in, and people didn't have the risk profile changed, and them going to the food distribution sites wasn't nearly worth the risk because there was some food elsewhere. We saw a significant uptick in bomb blasts on the street, homes, vehicles, and so the pattern of the MCIs, of the mass casualty incidents, changed from bullet wounds, mostly boys and young men, to to just indiscriminate bombings. We saw women, children, elderly on the days that the bombs came, and especially in the last 3 or 4 days right before we exited.
And briefly, Doctor, how do you treat that? Were you allowed to bring in the medical equipment, the medicine that you needed?
I think this is the key point of my witness of the process that is quite obviously strategic, planned, and well thought out by whoever's decided that the genocide of the Palestinian people is in their best interest, and the ultimate goal of Gaza is. I wasn't allowed to take anything in. I was told, you get one suitcase, Dr. Yousaf. You cannot take any medications that aren't for yourself. Do not dare bring medical supplies in. Don't bring baby formula. Do not bring, and this is directly from COGAT, the military arm associated with the International Movement of Physicians and Aid Workers. Don't you dare take anything more than 300 shekels worth of money. Do not, we will confiscate it at the border. And I tried. We tried taking things because we knew where we were going. We knew that on the Jordanian side where we stayed before entry, there was food just a few miles away from people that were starving. And so most of us on that bus that was allowed in stuffed stuff in our bags. And when we were screened by the IDF at the border, a vast majority of us had things confiscated from our bags, things like food and multivitamins and antibiotics, medical supplies like stethoscopes, oxygen, everything you could imagine that we wished we could have to treat the people on the ground in Gaza was confiscated at the border. And this resulted in a situation in which when those patients came in, dead and dying in different stages of dying, screaming in pain for their mothers, there were young kids on the floor in the last stages of life that we saw. And we knew that in any other environment, we probably could have done something for them. But in the environment of Gaza, in the death trap that is Gaza completely, we were unable to give them the aid they deserve, to provide the human dignity and humanity that they deserve.
All right, Dr. Ahmad Yousaf, paediatrician, who's just returned from Gaza today. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
Don't miss out and get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.